Welcome to the Puget Sound Underground Podcast. This is episode .5.
Coming way too many episodes late.
Yeah. We're like, 7 episodes deep now?
Yeah, 9.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And, we were focused on getting the guest stuff out. That was probably the most important part. But, we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of talk about who we are and, who's behind the scenes making all this magic happen and, just a little brief bio on who we are and what brought us here and what we love about the area and stuff like that. Give a little credibility as to who, why are we here? Why did we start the Puget Sound Underground? All that kind of different stuff. So I'd like to start by introducing our executive producer, Sean Murray. Sean is the
Hello world
editor and videographer and social media mastermind behind the Puget Sound Underground. And when you're on Twitter or Instagram, you're likely going to be talking to Sean
99% of the time, unless it's Facebook.
Yeah, if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, you're probably talking to me. I know you're on YouTube quite a bit as well, but yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn are kind of my forte, and you kind of have all the more modern social media stuff put together.
30 years and under,
right.
Social spaces.
Right. So, Sean, let's start with what brought you here to being the executive producer of the show. What do you actually do here?
So I actually worked in real estate a while ago. And while I was doing real estate, I actually started a podcast myself talking about the area. Again, it was why I kind of came onto this. I started a podcast specifically for the area I was working in. I was working in Traverse City, Michigan, which is... for people watching, it's right here on the mitten. It's a thing we can do. Anyway, so it was an awesome area, and it was like one of these very like super tech savvy, super forward thinking communities, which is like most of Michigan's like farmland, but like there's this hub of, we have fiber and like we had super cool internet companies, like startups that were like building around the town. And we were just talking about like the whole idea was just like bringing people in who were doing really interesting things. Like we had this set of siblings. It was these two twins, but there was like 7 siblings who worked in this company, and they all did VR. And it was just like we talked to them and just doing really interesting stuff. But I ended up stepping away from that for a bit. Because real estate's fun, and joined the Army, and ended up at JBLM for 2 years, and then came back out here, got out, and was looking for a job. I actually met James at an organization day for our brigade, and he tried to sell me a house, and that's how I ended up here. But yeah.
I'm still going to sell you that house.
You're still trying, yeah.
Every day. That's funny.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up here. And I've just had the right experience, like working with podcasts, working in the social spaces, and the fact that like James owns a real estate company as well. Like a lot of it translated to this position and being able to create something from the ground up and bringing people in, and more of the social aspects of what drives the podcast and what drives people to interact with content and why people do the things they do and why people watch the things they watch and what's interesting, and all the behind the scenes things, along with like, knowing how to run a camera and edit and all that. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a challenging thing figuring out what's interesting to the audience, right? And I think that's, for me, it's one of the most fun parts about this as we find more guests and interact with more people and the audience grows. That feedback is real powerful.
Yeah, for sure. You have to keep your finger on the pulse, really, because people are very fickle and like to change what they like super fast. But yeah, it's fun. It's definitely like the more interesting part of like working in social media, like at any job, not necessarily just this one, but like just understanding why people are doing what they're doing, why the trends are what they are. So yeah, for sure.
For me, I really wanted to start a brand and a soapbox, so to speak, to highlight people who are just doing real stuff. There are so many interesting, passionate people in the Puget Sound that really put their nose to the grindstone, and they'll sacrifice everything to accomplish their mission and move their ball forward, and I think that's such a big thing to be able to highlight, these. I met a single mom the other day that got a big break, started a Shopify and Etsy store, and has been doing it for years, and all of a sudden opened up some weird pocket, and all of a sudden had
blew up.
100, 150, 200 orders, and that turned into 500,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like she quit her job.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Stories like that are just so cool to see, and I think people need to hear about it because we have so much mainstream media that's only talking about certain little sections and pockets of what's going on here in the Puget Sound. And I think so much falls through the cracks that's actually really relevant to be talking about and looking at and giving them a more full perspective of what's actually happening underground.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the majority of like the interesting people doing really cool stuff in the area that are just like they don't get the respect or don't get the love or the attention that they deserve is like way outweighs the people that do get the attention. Like, I'm not saying the people that get attention from like big news media or whatever like don't deserve it, but there's so many people who just like aren't asking for like the attention, and they're doing really awesome things like very quietly, but building and creating and like making, like influencing what makes this area so cool and unique. Like, it's the reason I stayed here. It's like I love this area. Like, Michigan's too like cool, but way, way, way too cold, and there's nothing to do. But like here, on any day of the week, you can go out and see a concert. You can go to amazing food. You can go to museums or go whatever. Like, there's so much amazing stuff in the area, and it's just like you go like do a quick Google search and you can find 20 things to do right away. And it's because of these people who are just like doing their thing and just like loving what they're doing. And I think that's what makes this area great. And that's exactly what we're trying to show here is how awesome this area is and the people that are making this area how like as amazing as it is. So yeah, I completely agree.
Well, it's fun because there's so many different major categories. We didn't talk about it in your intro, but Sean is getting ready to spin off the Puget Sound Underground into a sports podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited about that. I'm not the biggest, I don't follow sports like a lot of these fantasy people do. But I love watching the games. I love going to hockey games. I've been to Seahawks games before, and holy crap, like that's an energy that is palpable. Like you can taste that. And so the aspect of what kind of sports we've got in this area is super interesting. So I'm excited to see it spin off into that. It's going to be fun, but it also spins off into other things.
Yeah, definitely.
It spins off into highlighting food and the crazy artistry in the chef world that we've got, and what kind of travel and entertainment and hiking and just all this other stuff that we can highlight about why the Puget Sound is one of the coolest places in the U.S. And I've been to quite a few places in the U.S., and there's some cool spots out there. But this area is very unique, and I love highlighting what's underneath the surface. There's just so much going on.
I think a great example of it is about 2 weeks ago I went to the Tacoma night market. I came back from skiing, went over there for a little bit. I was at the Glass Museum. And you just walk through the Glass Museum, and I know some of it's not local, but a lot of it is. And just like seeing all the artistry just from like the in-house artists who work at the Glass Museum, and their job is just to like make cool stuff all the time. And then you go through all the booths, and there's like Rainier Watch, and there's all these other like people who are doing really cool stuff in the area, and it's just like they've got a little booth, and like you wouldn't have no idea that they've got like this massive following and they create beautiful content or whatever, but just like walking by you had no idea. But like you find these little pockets of community and like artistry and that are just doing amazing things. Like Rainier Watch, for example, like all they do is post amazing pictures and repost amazing pictures of Mount Rainier. And if you walk by their booth, it's like, okay, there's like 20 people here selling shirts. And without knowing each brand and the backstory for each brand, you're like, oh, cool, another shirt. And it's like, Rainier Watch, cool, it's local, whatever. But like if you see it, you're like, oh, wow, they post stuff all the time, and it's really amazing. And like they're super nice guys, and they just are creating something that's like very unique to here. That's not just like, oh, we're going to like post pictures from, the national parks, whatever. Like they're just generic pictures. But it's like, professional photographers going out and taking these incredible, breathtaking photos of the mountains around us. And that's just a great collection right there. And they're doing something that other people are doing, but I think they're doing it really well and promoting it really well. So it's just stuff like that. It's just like we have things like that, and it can be like on a random Saturday night or a Friday night or whatever it is. And you can just find stuff to do like that. And I think that's another example of like what makes this area so amazing.
What's your favorite spot in the Puget Sound? Could be food, could be Could be anything. Like, do you have something that you really connected with in this area?
I'm gonna go with Stevens Pass. I mean, I've always loved skiing, and there's actual real mountains here. So, yeah. So I would definitely say Stevens Pass. I think it's a good. Well, I mean, a lot of the ski hills, not just them, but like that's my favorite. I go there because I have a pass, but like all the others are still like amazing, and just going to, not even like skiing. If you were just to go up there in the middle of the winter and take a day trip up on the one of the passes to go just like check out the roads and just the sightsee, it's incredible. If you go up there on an average day, you're going to go from, cloudy down like around here, around the sound. It's going to get colder and it's going to get rainy, and then it starts to get snowy. And then you can just see these like mounds of powder, and you see all the trees, and you can go into these backwoods where no one's been, and you're like walking through 3 feet of snow, and that's really cool. But then if you want, you can just leave, and you don't have to deal with the snow anymore. So, yeah, going up to the passes I think is really awesome, and just like the mountains in general. So,
yep. Mount Rainier is definitely at the top of my list. I love going up to the resort centers where the restaurant and the hotel are. But I remember something very specifically when I first moved to Tacoma, because when I grew up here in the Puget Sound back in the 90s, I was in Kent and Renton, but I was a kid, so I don't remember a ton of that. But when I moved back to Tacoma, I remember I had just bought my first motorcycle. It's a 1987 Harley Softail, and I'm a big guy, 6'4", but this thing was made for somebody who was bigger, so it had extended pegs and all that kind of different stuff. And I remember I went up to Kitsap County. I was just tooling around on a Saturday or something like that, and I was coming back down, so I just crossed over the bridge, and I'm on 16 getting ready to – it was at the interchange where you hit 5.
Yeah.
And they've got that big, like it has to be like a 200-foot American flag that's always flying there, and especially on windy days, and it's just an amazing piece of art, and it's just – you look at it, it's like, wow. But it was one of those days where the mountain behind it was so insanely clear. And it was right as I made that curve to hit I-5 South. I've got the flag and the mountain in the background. I'm just like, oh, this is America.
Yeah.
Holy crap, this is so cool. And I just, that sticks in my mind so clearly as like, when I think of the Puget Sound, that's one of the biggest things that I think about. Like, it's just the nature combined with the, the city, arena that we've kind of got, but then that giant art piece of that American flag just really stood out to me.
No, for sure. And I think another one for me is the first time I ever actually came into Tacoma. It was the first day I was here, like the first full day I was here, and we were driving over towards Ruston, like north on I-5, and it's like just dusk. So all the lights are on, the city's lit up, and you go down past City Center, you go past the Dome, and you go over the hill, and you just see the entire city like lit up, and it's like kind of like purple in the background, and it was just like, oh, this is awesome. And like having no experience with anything in the area before, it was just like, this is incredible. Like this is, it was just like an awe moment, just watching that and just being like, oh, this is the area I'm about to live in. Like this couldn't be cooler. So,
absolutely. A random question.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, we just started January 1st, 2020, right? So as of now, we're only, a month or so into the podcast. And we've had some pretty amazing guests on so far. I mean, Misha Tate, wow. Paul Akers, wow. We've had some pretty heavy hitters. Sean Tibbetts was a big one. Like, he's number 64 in the country right now. Like, the fact that
for restaurants, for
people
who haven't seen it.
No, for everything.
Yeah. He's 64.
Sean's a number. Yeah, he's number 64 in life.
Yeah.
But we've had some really just kick-ass people on the show. Is there anybody that you would be like, wow, if we could get this person to come on the show? Like, who's your dream guest to be here?
From the area,
yeah,
Misha's definitely up there. I mean, I've been a fight fan for God knows how long. So, like, outside of her, Mighty Mouse, because he's in the area as well, that would be really cool. I don't know, Sir Mix-a-Lot. Dude, I don't know. There's a lot of, like, that's the thing. I have a list. I literally have, a spreadsheet of people that we, like, can try to talk to, and it's, like, 150 people long, and it's just, like, going through the list and just, like, trying to contact agents or whatever. But, yeah, there's, like, a lot of incredible people. in the area, like Dave Matthews
yeah.
like Bill Nye. Dude, there's so many, but like, and I'm sure we'll get there one day. But there's just like an insane list that you could just throw a dart at, and you'd be like, yeah, that would be insane. So
many people laugh at me, but I really do think Bill Nye is at the top of my list right now. Like,
I mean, he said no to us.
he said no.
He said
right
okay,
now.
To be fair though, we sent a message to Bill Nye. It was like one of the first emails I sent out asking for guests, and this is back in like early October, and he was like one of the like I got a response back from his agent or like an assistant or someone like almost right away. It was like within like 6 hours. And I was like, no, Bill is not interested at this time, something like that. I was like, okay, I kind of figured that because we had like nothing out. It was just like, hey, we're doing this. We're in the area. Like, we're promoting people in the area. We know he lives here at least part of the time. You're Bill Nye, please come. Like, that would be awesome to be able to talk to you. And so I wasn't shocked by it. But the fact that we got a response so fast was kind of funny.
I've never worn a bow tie before, but I swear to God, if he comes on the show, I will put a suit and a bow tie on for Bill Nye. There's no question. Like, that's a thing.
Who's outside of Bill Nye? Who's your number one?
Oh man, the other one that's the story is really interesting to me is Cam Chancellor.
Yeah, for sure.
Who obviously was recruited by the Seahawks, had an amazing career here in the with the Seahawks, but he's not from here.
No, he's not, but he stayed here.
And he leaves the Seahawks and he starts a business up in Seattle. Like, I think I've got questions that are just people would want to know. Mm-hmm. Like, I really want to know what tied him to this area. And obviously, super successful career, did some great things. But I am more interested in what's his focus on now.
Yeah.
Right? Where is he headed? Obviously he can pretty much do anything he wants, and he chose to stay here. Like, I have questions.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to get him. And honestly, when I think about the guest pool of who could come on this show, I think it's completely endless. I think there are so many people that are truly underground that we don't even know about because they're not, like you said, they're not asking for attention. They're not doing this to be public. They're not doing this to be in front of the camera. And to be honest, I'm not necessarily doing this just to put them in front of people, but it's about their story, right? It's about where they came from, how they got here, and what's next, and what kind of impact are they having on the community. Those are the things that matter the most. Those are the things that I think are really interesting, and I do want to highlight. I just think there's so much possibility out there. So, yes, there are big celebrity guests, and, I watch a lot of Joe Rogan, and so watching the guests that he gets on, and of course he's a celebrity, so it's very easy for him to get celebrities. Obviously we're not on that level.
No, not yet.
Yet. But hopefully, I do hope that we get to a point where whether they're a celebrity or not, that's not the filter, but that the awareness around the project that we're doing here is so wide that the people kind of come out of the woodwork and they say, look, I'm not looking for attention here, but I think I've got an interesting story. Like, those are the people that I want to talk to. And I'm looking forward to the point where we start getting those people flowing in going, hey, I've got a story. What do you think about my story?
Yeah, and I think that's like when we had Will Jordan, he was the first person we did. And we weren't sure exactly how it was going to go because, of course, it's like the first episode. But then actually, and I talked to him beforehand. Like, he came over and like we recorded a concert for him like a couple days beforehand. Excuse me. So we recorded a concert before a couple days beforehand. He came over, grabbed the footage, and we were talking for a little bit as like it was like the files were moving or whatever. And then he started to tell a little bit of a story. I was like, oh, like this is gonna be like I thought it was gonna be good beforehand, but I was like, oh, this is gonna be really, really, really good. And he's a great example of someone who's doing amazing things in the community, who has done amazing things in the community, who's had great success, but at the same time is being very low key about what he's doing currently, even though it's still incredible. Like his whole camp idea and like building up these young musicians who have no idea and no experience and no mentorship, trying to become successful musicians, trying to get deals, trying to book shows, whatever it is. And he's like, hey, yeah, like let's sit down in a studio and like record something. And I actually went to the studio with him at one point. And he was bringing in a new artist who like had performed that night. And they were like, she was like working on an EP. And it's just like, he wasn't like, hey, like what kind of like right off the bat, like, hey, what do you like? It was like, hey, like I wanted to like let's talk about your mental state first. And he talked about this in the interview, in the podcast, but it's just he's got like a wholesome approach to it, and he's like actually building other people up around him, and it's not just about him. And I think that's a huge part of like what we're trying to do is find those people. And even though he didn't come to us asking to do something, it was like we just were like, hey, like you've got a cool story. Like from what we knew beforehand, it was a cool story. But then even like getting to talk to him, I was like, oh, this is really, really incredible. So
there's a big piece of what I look for as the host in somebody that I really err on the side of I'm looking for people who just want to put good into the world, because that's one of my own ideologies. I don't need anything back. I want to contribute. And Francis Charles, one of our other guests, said the same thing. He goes, I wake up every day looking to pay the rent on life.
yeah.
And that's me just in the mind state, right? Almost all the podcast episodes, I'm always trying to tap into the guests' ideologies. What do they wake up every day thinking? What's their current mindset for how they perceive and look at life? I want to tap into that because there's so many people who I feel are afloat. They feel lost. They feel like they're stuck. And in a lot of cases, when I think back as a teenager, I mean, I had a lot of mentors that they would say one line and it was like I had to soak on that line for 3 days because it's like, whoa, that changes my whole outlook on how I look at what's in front of me. And I think that is just so helpful. Even if you're sharp, even if you're on point, we can always get better. We can always do something better. Mm-hmm. We can always improve. And I think this world, especially in the cancel culture that we live in, there's so much negativity wrapped around mainstream media and just all the noise. There's so much noise out there. And I want to be the one to stand on the diving board and say, let's put good into the world.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the guests that we have had and the guests that we will have that mentality. They have that ideology of, I'm not here to sell anything. I'm not here to make money. I'm not here to, get you into my course or anything like that. I just want to contribute what I have. And I think I have that ideology as well. That's a big reason why I wanted to build this. I just want to put good and highlight the good that's in the world. And I think that makes a big impact over time. And if more of us jump onto positive ideologies, it changes the culture around us. And because we are the Puget Sound Underground, that's a pretty wide geographic range that I'd like to think that at some point we could have the soapbox to have an impact on that positivity being pushed out in the world.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think that the whole idea is that it doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be, banner waving. It's just like being good for good's sake and just telling the stories of interesting people who are doing cool things or impactful things. Or maybe it's not even impactful. Maybe it's just like you had a unique story growing up or whatever. Like Daniela Young.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not that she's not doing cool things now. She is. But just like her background, because of that, is influencing her now going forward. And just hearing that interesting story of someone who lives in this area. And it can be something, completely unique that, most of us haven't experienced, and just getting in the mindset from that person and just being like, oh, wow, this is a thing that people go through.
Well, and I'm always looking at the path that people take. We were all born somewhere different. We all, even if you were side by side, you could be twins, but have completely categorical different experiences because you can't be looking at it from the same perspective. So everybody that we bring on the show and everybody that we interact with and everybody we talk with, the understanding is you have a different perspective and context to this life. And I want to tap into that. I want to hear about that context and that perspective. And Daniela was such a perfect example for that story because I don't know, I've never met anybody in my whole life. I've never even heard of anybody who's had an experience like she had. Talk about a different way to look at life. Talk about, and of course, being in the military and going overseas and seeing a third world country and seeing a lot of the personality of the people behind that kind of a country. It's amazing to think that the only difference between us is we were born in different geographic regions of this planet. There's a funny quote, I think Gary Vee said it, we could have been born a tree. It's just as possible.
Yeah.
Right? And then, of course, there's the stats about, what are the actual numerical odds around just being born. in the first place. And it's a sick number. Like scientists put this number together and oh my God, it's a sick number. So to think that we literally won the lottery just by being here is an amazing perspective. But I really think that we're all going through life, and I think it's easy to get into the seat of, well, my perspective is the only one that matters because it's the one that I see. And I think when people realize that there's more than just their perspective and opening themselves up to the possibility that, oh, there's this other context, this other perspective that could make me more efficient at life or a better leader or a better person, a better sibling, a better spouse, whatever it might be, understanding that there's different perspectives matter. And so I like these high-level stories, no matter who they're from, because I think that's what it offers. I think it offers perspective and context that we haven't had before.
Yeah, and even if it's like a similar story to yours, but just like being 1 degree off, just being 1 degree off is it's a big thing. Like, just having that slight difference in opinion or worldview, and you have a conversation with someone. And not, like, that's it. That's having a conversation. That's all it boils down to. And I think that's what, that's the whole point of this. It's just like, hey, we're having conversations. That's all it is. And because no one does it anymore. Like, how often do you sit down and talk with someone? It's super rare. Yeah, exactly. Rare. And even if, you're not involved in the conversation, even hearing hearing a conversation about someone else's point of view, it's cool. And that's the whole point. So
it is.
Yeah.
It is. You have any other questions?
Yeah. I guess my last question would be to everyone listening. If you heard this and have someone in mind, whether that be like an artist or a musician or, a writer, it could just be someone who's being very quiet about what they're doing or they're doing good. They Steve Lynch, working at Goodwill and just having an impact there, just anything. If someone comes to mind when we're talking about this, hit us up and send us their name, send us their information. We're looking for interesting people, and it doesn't just have to come through our dream lineup of people. But we're looking for underground people. It doesn't have to be Bill Nye, as much as he's not the underground. We are looking for people who are just quietly doing stuff.
He's as far above the ground as you can get. He's launching crap into space right now, which is cool. That's
so
kind of why I want to talk to him.
If you heard this and are like, oh, that's my cousin, or that's my wife, or that's my husband, that's my boss, whatever it is, hit us up and send us some information. We'd love to get to talk to different people, because that's we can only find so many people through Google, and that's kind of our cap, or it's our immediate circles, or Google searches, or searching through Instagram stories or whatever it is. Or just even with friends recommending stuff, we're trying to get outside of that. And so the more people that are recommended to us, the more interesting stories, the more different stories we can tell, it just makes it better for everybody. And more people can hear unique stories, and more people hear the stories, and we build off of that. And we're trying to cultivate this group of interesting people in this area. So
I really like to look at it like a root system of a tree, right? We talk about the underground, so let's take ourselves underground real quick.
Yeah.
The root system of a really big tree can go miles, right? And I do like to think of it like that, where we've got a root system that's stretching out as far as we can possibly go. And as we touch, we connect with other roots, and we're taking in stuff from a lot of different ways, and then we're giving back, right? There's that rotation, that system. But we're not the only tree, right? There's millions. If every person was a tree, there's millions in this area, right? And so I may not know everybody, and you may not know everybody, and I think we know some pretty cool people, but we need more, right? We need to connect. And so the more awareness we get around this project, the more awareness we get around our mission and what we're trying to accomplish here, like Sean said, I really want to have the people contribute. This isn't just about us, because I guarantee you, everybody knows somebody who has some kind of an amazing story, is doing something that's revolutionary, is doing something that's outside the scope of just working a 9-to-5 job and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So we definitely want to get connected with those people and see them here at the table, right?
And that's why we called ourselves the curators and not the undergrad itself. We are the curators of the underground because we're not the underground. We're trying to bring the people from the underground together, and that was the whole idea.
It's a super good point.
Yeah.
Super good point. So thank you for allowing us to continue to be curators of the underground, and please contribute. You can also contribute by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts.
It means the world. Like, there's an algorithm that Apple uses and all the other sources, like, Spotify, SoundCloud, anything else. But Apple is very fickle. So if you want to rate and review 5 stars or 1 star, it literally doesn't matter. Just be honest, and it would mean a lot because it actually, like, bumps us up, and when people search Puget Sound or something like that, it might come up faster.
Yep. Also, YouTube, please subscribe so you get all of our updates and see all the cool episodes and other content to do with sports and food and events and travel. There's going to be a lot on the horizon that are currently in the works right now that are going to be coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. We'd love your contributions. We'd love you to participate, and we would love your subscription and love. So throw us some love.
Yeah.
And if we missed anything, if there's anything you're super ultra curious about who we are and why we do this, feel free to comment in the comment section below, or you can always send us a message on LinkedIn, Instagram,
so
Facebook.
You can find all of our socials.
There we go. There we go. This is why you're here, Sean.
Yeah, this is why I'm here. So our Twitter, Instagram, it's at PugetU. You can find us SoundCloud, Puget Sound Underground Podcast. Same thing with Apple, SoundCloud, Spotify. If you're trying to find us on Facebook, it is Puget Sound Underground. But any of the other socials, most likely it's just going to be PugetU. You can also email us if you've got any longer form questions or you don't want to post it publicly. It's info@PugetSoundUnderground.com. So
also the website.
Yes, PugetSoundUnderground.com.
Boom.
There we go.
There it is.
That's what I'm here for. This is what I get paid to do.
Way to go. Doing your job. Yeah. Sean earns his gold star today. All right. All right. Well, thank you, listeners and participators of the Puget Sound Underground podcast. I am very honored to have you watching, and we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.
See you guys later. Also, not a Lions fan. Not a Lions fan.